Okay.
This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for How to Super Age with Elise Marie Collins. And for those of you who were looking for the podcast last week, um, my fingers hit the wrong button on record. And so we did a great job, Elise, but nobody ever is ever going to get to see that show. So we're going to try to recreate it and maybe give you a little more information. But you know, I'm looking forward to reading the book. Um, this week, I've spent a lot of time reading snippets of a bunch of different books. Um, and one of the things that I'm learning is that we all need to take a step back from what we think we know and start reading other things or looking them up because it can spark, like, oh, either I know it or I need to know more, or maybe that's not true. My brain has been going a mile a minute for the last week. So hopefully I can keep my mouth in tune with my brain today.
Yes, and that all those things relate to how to super age. I'll just hold up my book because I think you said the book, and in case you're watching, my book is Super Ager. You can look younger, have more energy, a better memory, and live a long and healthy life. Sometimes I have to read that because I can barely remember all the things. And there is so much about the mind, the heart, and the body that all help us age and help us age in a way. We're always aging. I mean, we're aging throughout the life course, throughout our lives. So you brought up an important point about the mind, because the mind can sometimes be very helpful in giving us information or helping us to integrate information, but sometimes the mind gets in the way, and that could be a whole podcast.
Absolutely. No,
I
anybody
think,
who grew up with cartoons, there was always some cartoon of the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other, and feeding you information. And the reality of it is our brain does that to us almost on a regular basis. And we're the only ones who can shut it off or turn it on.
yeah, that's a great point. The cartoon is a wonderful visual. And what I'm thinking about right now that might be helpful to the listeners is to drop into the heart or the body, because the body doesn't lie. Yet we don't get trained in how to listen to our bodies. We're mostly in that cartoon space where we're
Right.
listening to this or that, and we can just spin out of control. So I think if I could glean anything from what you're saying is, if you are feeling that, even if you don't get any answers, or just to quiet your mind, that's where, if you meditate, that can be helpful. But if you're really spinning out, meditating can be very overwhelming. Maybe take a walk. I'm trying to think of some of the things when I'm really agitated, my mind is agitated. It happens to everybody. Even people, I'm sure the Dalai Lama has total agitation on some days. And maybe you have some ways. How do you unwind when you feel agitated, Karen?
Well, I never used to do this, but I'm doing it now. Um, so I used to program myself. These are the things I'm going to do during the day. This is when I'm going to do them. And now, not so much. It's, yeah, I know there are things that need to get done, but if, let's say, like today, I'm doing one podcast after another with about 15 minutes in between. Um, if I'm feeling overwhelmed that I'm just been doing too much and sitting too long, I may get up and go throw a load of laundry in. And that will take me to a different place. Okay. It's not my work. It's not a difficult chore to do. I don't really have to think too much about it. Um, I used to take that time and I would turn on the TV, and I don't do that anymore because then the TV can get those sounds and going. But when I go do a small task, go put the laundry in, go out and get the mail, even just walk out and look at my plants. Okay. It's almost like a wash, and I don't have to think too much about it. It's not like you said, if all that's going on in my mind and I said, okay, well, right now I'm going to meditate, I probably would be working so hard on trying to meditate that would make those voices sound even louder.
Yeah, and I like to bring that up because I am also a yoga teacher, and I've had many students either come to class feeling very agitated, and I teach different classes. Some of my classes are more movement oriented, some of them are just very still. And if you're in that heightened state where you just feel like you're kind of nervously shaking, or that state that we all get into at one time or another, it's human. And so how can we get out of it? Because it's impossible. It's like being on the freeway going 100 miles an hour and then like slamming on the brakes. It does not, your body's not capable of doing it. That's why we call practice. And so, yeah, maybe that's not the best time to go to restorative yoga when you're feeling that agitation, walking, talking. Sometimes you just need to just vent with a loved one, friend, or even talk to yourself. Journaling is another good one. Those are things coming to mind. Sometimes even just doing something very active, sometimes even walking feels too slow. We want to just, do some shaking or jumping, or, depending on your body. I know some of us jumping jacks might be challenging, but, or cartwheel or something, just something to get that out. So that's something powerful to share with listeners, because we all get disconnected, and how to reconnect. I do want to circle back to purpose, because last time when we didn't record, we talked about purpose and how important that is for aging and health and well-being for any age. And I know you shared a bit about your story. I'd love for you to revisit how you came to start New Cleveland Radio. That's the angel alarm. It's 11:11 my time, but I know everyone's in different time zones, and you're going to be watching this in the future, but say hello to the angels.
So, as I shared before, and I've shared this on other podcasts as well, I was working in corporate America, and corporate America had this age bias. They didn't really talk about it, but it was obvious. I knew I was the oldest individual on my campus, and in addition to that, I was wearing hearing aids. And so people around me just were making my life a little bit more difficult. They would come up to me and whisper, or we'd be sitting in a meeting, and, I'd have to sit in the back of the room, and they wouldn't use a microphone. And so corporate America basically pushed me out. And at first I was depressed, and what am I going to do with my life? I've been doing this now for almost 10 years. I love it. Maybe didn't love the condition, but loved what I was doing. And I had already been going back to school for my master's. I was about to graduate. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that my son had done an internship for his business degree in internet radio. And it was like, well, why can't I do that? I mean, I have a computer, I have a microphone, I could do that as well. And I thought about it for a while, and then I went to the internet station he was working at, and I came up with this idea of, what about a program that reaches out to everybody and we just talk about our journey in life? I don't have to be a therapist, I don't have to be a doctor, I don't have to be a social worker. It's just a conversation. And I started it there, and it was going well until one day they said, we really have an urban population and they're not talkers. So this isn't really fitting in. So I went out on my own. And it's been since then that I realized that here I was in my 60s creating a new purpose for my life. And that's how I look at it every day. Even the days that I wake up really early to do a recording, such as this morning, I had to be up at 5 o'clock for a recording we were doing for somebody who's out on the West Coast, okay, who before they were going to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, they wanted to record. And when I set it up, I didn't think anything of it because I typically wake up around that time. But I'll tell you this morning, it was the most difficult thing for me to get up. And then to put myself into the podcast. But within probably 30 seconds to a minute, I realized again what my purpose is. And it was probably the most relaxed I've been on any podcast because it was like, it's okay. If I need to, I'll go to sleep when this is over. And if it's not okay, I'll do something else. And I think that's what you are referring to when you say purpose. If it makes you feel good, and I now learn to feel, where is that? Where does that feel good? Is it in my stomach? Is it in my head? Is it my throat feels constricted? So maybe it's not there, but it's somewhere else. And then if I feel constriction somewhere else, what's causing that? And it's just a way of, not complaining, like, I guess the way I could say it is I could have looked at the calendar and said, I'm in my 60s, I'm too old to do this. Or this morning I could have looked at the clock and said, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm just going to text them and say, I don't want to do this. I'm too tired. But if there's a reason behind it, it's a road that you can travel.
Yeah. And I think the same goes for if you were going to get up maybe and start some new habit. Of course, you're not going to feel like it. And you're going to go through all the same, like the cartoon, this, that's, or this or that. We go back to the cartoon, but dropping into the body is to me where the purpose lies. And I want to circle back to a couple things you said. First of all, I'm really sorry about that corporate job. It sounds like it all turned out for the better, but I know there's a lot of people who are experiencing similar or have experienced similar ageism in the workplace. And it's my belief that corporate America has not caught up with the reality of aging. I mean, it's not even a belief, it's been studied. Some of you may not know this, but I'm a gerontologist. I just a year ago graduated with a master's in gerontology. And what I learned in gerontology school is that and this is something it sounds obvious, but just to really nail it in, that those beliefs, and specifically ageist beliefs, influence our biology. We don't know exactly how. We do not know, how it affects, how the blood flow in your body, or it probably, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it affects your blood pressure. There is measures, but how that exactly happens, like somebody mistreating you, such as maybe whispering when they know you have a hearing difference. How does that affect Karen's biology? We don't know exactly. We can't pinpoint that. The scientists can't pinpoint it, but they know that ageism takes 7 years off your life. And that's why the World Health Organization it's a global campaign. It's a global epidemic. So just to really make sure that everybody knows that. And older adults, it's hard not to experience that. You'll experience it if you live long enough. Let's just put it that way. And some have said ageism is when it's a younger person, because we could be ageist about a young person, just kind of poo-pooing them. You don't know what you're talking about, but it can go in all directions. And if you are a young person that's ageist against an older person, then it's said that you are discriminating against your future self or judging your future self.
Yep.
And that's an interesting way to turn it around.
Well, and I love when you brought that up last week, because I really thought about that comment because on the weekend, as an IT professional, I work with very young individuals. I would say the average age is maybe 20, 21. And my job isn't to, to be the older person, but it's to be their contemporary as well as the expert in my area. And I've been very lucky for the last 4 years to be working in the same store. But on Saturday, I was told I'm being moved to a different store. And I I almost quit because my thought was I have worked so hard at making sure there is no ageism at this store. And my comment was, it's going to take me a while to be successful at the new store. And my manager was very understanding. He said, I know. He said, I know what you're up against. He said, and I just want you to go in and do what you've always done before. And it started to wear on me over the weekend as I was saying my goodbyes at the first store. And then I thought about it, and it's like, when I look in the mirror, I just see me. You know, I I know I'm 71, but I don't look and say, "Oh my God, there's a 71-year-old woman." No, I'm Karen. This is what my ability is. And so I know that when I walk in there this weekend, that's how I'm going to walk in there. And if more of us could have that attitude, I think it would help us.
Wow. Well, I would love to hear more stories about this. I almost want to say journal, blog. There's a lot to process. And we also have internalized ageism too. I mean, everybody has that because we've grown up in this soup, this tea. We've been steeped in this tea of a society that doesn't value older adults. So there's also, I think, for me included, everybody to unravel. So I don't know if that's part of your process, but I think we need to tell more stories about what happens to older adults in the workplace. There is going to be, again, I don't have these exact statistics, but we can look them up, maybe put them in the show notes, but there's like 4 generations in the workforce now. So the below the millennials, I don't know what to call them, Generation Z, millennials, X, and baby boomers, and even actually probably 5, because my dad is working and he has his own business and he is silent generation. So I don't know if there's silent generation in corporate America, but this is something we all need to think about and learn about. And it's not really getting talked about. So it's something I'm interested in. And I think intergenerational relationships are very rich and important. And we don't have that many opportunities to interact, maybe with our kids, but it sounds like in your job, you are interacting with younger adults. And that is such a powerful opportunity for both of us, because there's a lot to say about that. But anything else you want to add to that, Karen?
Well, the only thing that I would add to it is that I grew up in a family where my parents were not afraid to age. Okay. And when I say not afraid to age, my mother, she wouldn't dress provocatively, but she was in her 80s and 90s and wearing blue jeans. Okay. And it looked appropriate. And my mother never thought of the fact that I'm a certain age, so I can only wear certain makeup. I can only wear certain clothes. My father, the same way. And so growing up in a home like that, that's how I've lived my life. Yet I know I have friends whose parents, taught them as soon as you become in your early 20s, this is the way you're supposed to act and dress. And then by the time you hit 40, this is the way you're supposed to act and dress. And it's like, but why? Where is it written? And I think that's why it's so easy or easier for me to be with various age groups and feel comfortable. I don't like everything that maybe the Z generation is listening to as far as their music, but it doesn't mean that I can't at least attempt to share it with them.
Yeah, you've brought up some interesting points. And I remember last week we also touched on role models and how many, I mean, I also grew up with uh, grandparents and, well, my parents that just aged, I mean, feeling like they just want to do what they want to do.
Sure.
And not everybody has that opportunity in a certain way. Like if there's a lot that goes into it, but I'll just say my parents had the privilege to age that way. My dad was able to have his own business. My mom had a career where she has a great retirement that she worked for government, so she could just rely on that. And she had a career when not many women had careers. So I think that helped her to get in the space of like, I don't listen to what other people, I don't listen to the machine, the noise. So she had that practice. But not everybody has that or those role models. There's so much that goes into it. So I hope that we can help people to think this through. And that's why I also put a lot of stories in Super Ager, because it's not just the health. There's things about how to be healthy, how to connect to listening to yourself, to listening to your body, to being more calm and peaceful, so that that goes through, but goes out to the world. But we also need role models, because if we haven't seen that, if we haven't grown up around even just aging adults, because sometimes grandparents, great grandparents are clear across the world, across the country, we may not be that connected to them physically, and so that's an important factor. So I think last week we also talked about, there's a video of a gymnast. Somebody sent this to me. I think a couple people sent it to me, and I don't know her name, but it probably was getting a lot of views on YouTube. A woman who is in her, I think she was like 95, and she is doing all kinds of gymnastic routine. She's on the parallel bars. I mean, she's doing things I could not do right now. And I'm a yoga teacher. I'm like, I cannot do that. And it's pretty incredible. And some in the ageism, there's people that say, don't share those kind of videos, because that makes it, people think, I know, yeah. There's an eye roll moment. If you're listening, Karen just made a face. So I'm just gonna gives the pros and cons. So yeah, maybe we look at that and we go, I cannot do that, and we feel discouraged. But I think most people see that and they're like, wow, because what does it take? What discipline does it take to, you're not just going to wake up and be 95 and do the parallel bars and do cartwheels and do all these moves. That's discipline. And that's probably, I mean, I don't know this woman. All I know is what I saw on video. She probably, within herself had to continue. I'm sure every day she doesn't want to train. There's a lot. She probably has a lot of aches and pains. And yet she's built a supportive network around her. That is clear in the video, because you see her after she does her, there's a finale kind of moment when I throw up my arms if you're listening. Yeah. You see her trainers, you see her people that are supporting her, like hug her. You see that kind of moment after the video. And I bet she did that when she was younger. I mean, I don't think she started, maybe she started in her 60s, but it looks like a lifelong practice. Sure. And that is something, if you keep up things, if you keep up, say, playing a musical instrument or something like yoga, you can stay at a certain level. If you stop practicing, it won't happen. But clearly there's discipline. And also, I'm sure other people maybe thought things that she defied. Maybe they thought, oh, she's too old to practice, or whatever messages she got either out loud or non-verbally. I'm sure she had to deal with that. So, yeah.
And you know what? We all go through that throughout our whole life. Okay. We can be 10 years old and maybe we haven't learned how to ride a bike yet. Okay. And people will say, well, if you haven't learned how to ride a bike yet, you're probably never going to learn. Well, that's not true. It's, what you are willing to do to go forward with whatever that project is. Um, I was never an exerciser. I hated it. Um, but in the last 3 years, I'm an exerciser. Okay. Um, I can't say I love it, but I don't hate it. And I can do more and more, um, which sometimes surprises me because it's like, I'm listening to those voices. Well, you're 71. Should you be able to do that? Well, whether I'm should or shouldn't, that doesn't count. I can do it and I'm doing it. So I think we have to stop putting the brakes on ourselves. Like you said, you know, we are in this fast society where we're running, running, running. Um, and then if all of a sudden we stop because we say, oh, I can't do it, then we're going to collide and we won't be able to do it. We got to take the strides to get there.
Yeah. And what I liked about what you said is it was a shift in your identity, because we all kind of cling. That's our mind. Our mind likes our identity. Our mind likes our ego. The heart. The heart is different. The heart is ready to like, play and exercise, maybe like a kid.
Yep.
But our mind will sometimes tell us I'm this or I'm that. And again, it can start at a very early age. So what does your heart want to do? Does your heart want to exercise? Is your heart, if we do, even doing an exercise that we don't enjoy, that's not going to get very far. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So that's a very important point. And just thinking of where we gave up maybe and believe something about ourselves that it could have come from anywhere. It could have come from maybe a parent just trying to protect us, maybe just from something we heard in school. That used to drive me crazy too, even raising my son, where there is, this kid is not good at that or not good at that. And my son did go to a Quaker school. And that was one of the things I loved about Quaker education, was being really open to like they call it the inner light. Like, what is that light? What makes your light shine? Which to me is kind of like a heartfelt, or not the mind, but what lights you up. That's what's going to get you going. It's similar to purpose too. And I think that having that awareness of what is going to help you shine your light in the moment, in the bigger scheme of things.
Well, and this past year, as we've gone through the pandemic, one of the things I've seen is that a lot of people are now shifting their careers around. Okay. Some for the good and some not for the good. And when I say that is there are some people that have taken the easy way out and they go, well, I'm afraid of the virus. I'm afraid of this and that. So I'm just going to stay on unemployment. And I look at them and I go, really? Then what are you going to do while you're on that unemployment? Okay. Find that inner light. Okay. You have that opportunity now to find that other path that's going to make you feel better. But then there are others who have said, I'm taking the time to reevaluate where I'm doing the best at my work and having time for myself and having time for family. And last night on the news, they were talking about how difficult it now is that employers want many of their workers to come back into the office. And now they have to sit back and realize, wait a second, this group over here, they're doing more working from home and they're happy. Okay. They're getting their job done. They're happy. They're productive. If I bring them back into the office, am I going to get that same out of them? And then there's others who aren't doing well at home because they need people around them as they work. And I think if we start looking at this internally, we're going to find out what we all need as well. And that's where the conversation begins.
I 100% agree. I would even say a question I would ask our listeners is, if you could imagine 10, 20 years from now, looking back at this time of the pandemic, whatever time we're now, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but right now, what would you think, looking back, what would you want to do or remember? Because I think we do get caught up in the fear, but that hindsight, imagine going into the future, being 70, 80, 100 years old, whatever it is. Maybe you're 30 and you could think of being 40 or 50. What would you like to remember? Would you like to remember, oh, I just felt fear every day and I didn't do much, or I called my children every day. I faced, everybody has their own answer. And I think that's an important question. And it's something I learned from gerontology. The study of aging is that we cannot control what happens in the world. And there's theories and things like gerontologists studied what happened during the Depression, what happened during World War I. Nobody could control those points in history, but how the people reacted. And the agency is a great word. I love that word, agency, because if you just let, life happen to you, then, the events around you, they're always going to affect us, but you will be more of the effect than the cause. So I love for people to think about that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are so many roads to take, and that's something that some of us don't see. Another podcast we do is with a personal coach, and she's made me see it even more so that we go down this path daily, but every once in a while we look to the right, we look to the left, and we go, hey, I'm going to try that. And there are other days that we turn around and we run backwards. And, maybe we needed to. Maybe that was, the way to protect ourselves. But it's our choices that we make. And if we make the choice to age as healthy as we can and control what we can, we can be 80, 90, 100 years old and still very vital. But if we sit back and go, oh, I'm now starting to get arthritis. Oh, I probably should stop typing on the computer because it's making carpal tunnel worse, or whatever. Then what do you have? You don't have the things that you need for yourself right now.
Yeah, that's very true. We want to encourage you. We want to cheer you on. And I wanted to change gears a little bit, because last time we did talk about sleep, and I just want to throw in a couple things about sleep, because that's something practical that I've been working with people now on sleep, because it's something that's free. We don't have to pay for sleep. Yeah, you could have someone help you with sleep, a coach, or pay for yoga classes. You can pay for me to help you, but tips and tricks can really be helpful. And there's also so much we're learning about sleep. And a few years ago, I wrote about 3 different tribes. The San, I can never remember right off the top of my head, the Tisan, San, and there's one other group. And these are tribes that live without electricity. They live literally like it's the Paleolithic era. And so what we learn from these groups about sleep is very interesting. A lot has to do with light, as a lot of people know, watch out for the computer screen later at night. And some people are more sensitive. Some people don't get as affected. I'm somebody who's been very affected. Last time, I don't think I have them close by, but I put on my blue blocker glasses, which you can do things internally in your computer to switch the light off. But if like TV screens, a lot of them don't have anything. So if I'm going to watch a show with a family member, I put on those glasses because otherwise I'm up all night for me.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm that kind of person. And some are, I think some people will
Sure.
relate to this. And we make it more sensitive as we age, because this is something we also talked about last week, was the stages of life in Ayurveda. And the stage from middle age to however long we live, we become more sensitive. We are more vulnerable. It is the air stage of life. That's just part of the process.
Sure.
And so we may become more sensitive to certain things. We're going to need to change because there's a physical process until we learn how to bypass that. But I'm like, I don't think it will happen in my lifetime. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with, as you know, there's some people think we should live forever or to be 1,000.
Yeah, I don't
We'll
think
do that in another podcast.
Well, it's interesting because, and especially when you talk about light, living in the Midwest, come October when we change our time, it starts getting dark at 4:30 in the afternoon. And once I'm home at 4:30 in the afternoon, I feel like, I need to start getting ready for bed, and I may go change my clothes. I may, go sit on the couch and put, a blanket around me. Yet now that time has changed again, at 4:30 in the afternoon, I'm outside walking, or I'm, going and running errands, because I live for the light. Okay. And that's why I'm typically an early riser, because I like seeing the light come into my life. Uh, if if I could have it my way, uh, I would live someplace where I had light for 12 hours a day, because that would truly, make my heart happy. So, you know, when you start thinking about that, this past year, I was able to get through the winter a lot easier. I'm not exactly sure how I did it, but I just kept reminding myself that, darkness isn't going to be here all the time. And pretty soon, the days will get longer. There'll be a little bit more light. And I kept watching for it. Like every evening, I'd look outside. Do we have an extra 30 seconds of light? Wow, that made me feel good. Um, and I think sometimes we compare the darkness to us getting old and dying. And I think, you know, for those of us, who are 70 and above, that's what we start thinking about, is like, am I going to see the sun tomorrow?
Wow, there's a lot there. And what I loved about what you said, Kieran, is living with the seasons. And that is Ayurveda, which is really the science of life, studying life. And life is light and living seasonally, noticing how the light changes. And that is something that they did find with all three of those groups, that they went to bed, and all of them are in warm climates where it's a little bit different, because I mean, we can speculate, but I think that's the only places where there is people living like there's with the no electricity, because I think everybody else is like, let me get warmer.
Right. Exactly.
So that's a whole nother subject. But to live, like get up in the morning with the light and with the drop in temperature, that's something that really helps sleep. To not everybody synchronizes their sleep with the light, but if you can. And there was something else, but I'm not remembering what it was that you said, noticing the light. And in all those different groups, they didn't really experience insomnia. Excuse me, because they were just, it was natural for them to connect to nature and connect to the seasons. I know what it is. people sleep more in the winter. And that sounds like something you're naturally doing, feeling like you want to wind down earlier with less light. And that was something just because they just put modern sleep monitors on members of these different groups, tribes, and monitor their sleep. And he just found that everyone naturally slept an hour longer in the winter. And yeah, I'm sure those places, they're all close to the equator, so they're all warm and don't have that much change in the
temperature, right?
Yeah, daylight and things like that. But there's enough that you do need to sleep more with that darkness. So
how interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We touched a lot of areas today, like we did last week. And I know we keep referring to last week, but, it was almost like a preparation for today, I think, which I think was really, really good. And I'm hoping that your listeners will, start to contact you or contact New Cleveland Radio. And maybe we can start getting you involved. One of the things we've done on a few other shows, we've opened up the Zoom link and we've sent out invitations and said, come join us, be part of the conversation. Sometimes it's difficult when you have a guest because your guest really, is sharing a lot of, really good information and we don't want to take up too much of their time, but please let us know how you're aging, and show the book again and tell everybody how they can get it.
Yes, Super Ager. It's available on IndieBound. It's available on Amazon, and you can order it from bookstores if they don't have it. Thank you for asking. And I'm planning to come to a podcast tomorrow.
Okay, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you again, and we'll see you. Actually, we'll see you next week since we're off schedule. So
yeah, we'll see you next week. And yeah, send any questions or comments, put them in the chat, put them in the comments, and thank you. Not the chat, the comments in the videos or podcast. Great.
All right. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.